Welcome to Sew with Mrs. Herbert. In this episode, we are going to make and attach our pockets onto the apron. I enlarge a section of the pattern guide sheet so that we can see the beginning steps for the pocket. So apron C, number 1, overcast the top edge of upper pocket. Now, an overcast stitch is something that will be a seam finish for the upper edge, but it's usually done on medium to heavy weight fabric. I did a sample and just zigzagging looked like this. It's not smooth and flat, it curls the fabric up. An actual overcast stitch, which your machine may or may not have, did the same kind of thing. It didn't lay flat and it pulled the fabric up too much. So those two types of seam finishes are not the best choice for this lightweight fabric. So let me show you. If you have lightweight, follow me. If you have heavier to medium weight and you try on a scrap, try a zigzag, then you might be happy with that. So either way is fine. So you're finding out there's not a right way and a wrong way to some of these things. It's what looks best and what you're most pleased with. So here we go. I happen to have a 1/4-inch foot for my sewing machine. Now, this is the regular foot for straight stitching and zigzag, all the other stitches, but a 1/4-inch foot, look up closer, it has a little guide here so that the fabric will only go as far out as a 1/4 inch. You can use a foot like this if you have one. If not, then use the 1/4 inch marking on the edge, and on this machine it would be right here on the edge of, along this line on your throat plate. Okay, so I'm going to attach my 1/4 inch foot. Raise my presser foot, put the thread underneath. My stitch is set for a straight stitch. I'll take my pattern off. This is the top edge of the pocket. And now I'm just stitching a line a 1/4 inch from the edge. Clipping the threads on both ends. Okay, it's a little curled a little, but I can just smooth it out. All right, I'll take this to my ironing board and I will press this right, let me move it up, but hopefully you can see that, right along that line of stitching. Instead of having to measure a 1/4 inch, I've just measured it with my machine. So I'm going to go press it up, make a crease right there. I'll be right back. I pressed the upper edge toward the wrong side. I realized at the iron that I had turned it toward the right side, so I made sure it's correct now, toward the wrong side, and I know that because of the way I made my tailor tacks. Now let's read the directions for the next two parts. Turn top edge to outside along fold line, stitch ends, trim as shown. So we're turning the top toward the right side, which seems backwards, but it'll turn out okay. And then we trim here. Now what will be after that? Turn top edge of pocket to inside, turning in remaining seam allowances and diagonally folding corners, press. Stitch close to inner edge as shown. Now I don't have any markings on my pattern piece to indicate this 5/8 inch seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is, when I stitch this part down, I'm going to continue stitching 5/8 inch, pivot, go 5/8 across this edge, and then pivot up, so that I'll have markings again to show me how to press this part. All right. So here we are. I'm turning it with right side up, folding it so that turn top edge to outside along fold line. So I'm folding what will be the hem of the pocket at the top, pinning through 3 layers, that little 1/4 inch folded up, and then the pocket, hem, and the front of the pocket. Okay, the other side. All right, I've got my machine set for straight stitch. I put my tape on at 5/8 of an inch. I am going to back stitch, so I'm starting in a little less than 1/4 of an inch. I'll start with reverse. I even take a stitch off the edge and then go forward. Now, as we said, the directions show you to just sew this far. But we want to know where to fold it. So our stitching line will give us our pressing line. So I'm using my judgment as to where 5/8 will be. I'll put my needle down, lift up my presser foot, turn, and because I'm experienced, I'm pretty good at it. So yep, when I turned, I was exactly at 5/8. If you've gone too far, just back up a little. If it's too short, come back, do another stitch, then come forward. So now I'll continue to sew 5/8 to here. And again, I'm getting close, and that looked like 5/8 right there. Let me turn. Go. Okay, I'm making sure that what's going to be the hem of the pocket is folded correctly. Go to the end, back stitch, just a few stitches, and then I'll take this out. Now, my machine is having a little problem with this tension. I need to work on that. But for this, just so you know that yours probably will look nicer than that, right now it says turn top edge toward the fold line, stitch ends. We did that. So the next is to trim. So this shows trimming down and over. What I usually do is just start here and go at an angle so that it's 1/4 inch and then trim the pocket part. So mine looks more like that with an angle rather than straight. I'll do that on the other side. I'm starting 1/4 inch over from my stitching and then just trim off to 1/4 on the top. Okay, now turn top edge of pocket to inside, turning in remaining seam allowances and diagonally folding corners. So I'll take this and see where those points are? That's right where my tailor tack is. So I can take that out. It served its purpose. And it looks like oh, there's the other one. I can take that out. There we go. Or I could have turned it back and taken it out from the inside. Okay, now my scissors are closed, and I just want to push this seam out. There we go. So now you notice this edge is folded under because that's what we did earlier. We have this little tiny pocket, and you've got these lines here. We'll go to the iron, and we'll iron the seam allowance toward the inside of the pocket. At the bottom, I know this is small to see, the bottom will be pressing it up. And when they talk about turning the remaining seam allowances, it says, and diagonally folding the corners. I'll show you how to do that when we're actually pinning it onto the apron. So then it says press, and it's saying stitch close to inner edge as shown. All we're stitching is the hem of our pocket right here. So I'm going to go to the iron press and be back to show you the next phase. When I pressed the seam allowances toward the center of the pocket, I also pressed diagonally at the corner. So I pressed the bottom up, the side up, then I opened it so I could see the point, and I pressed the point up. Now, when I actually fold this, I've got the corner folded in, the side, and then when I turn the bottom up, right along that stitching line, look at how pretty that corner is going to look when it's sewn. So that's what they were talking about. It's easier when you see it. So now the next step, stitch close to inner edge as shown. So right here, I am going to sew the hem of the pocket. I am going to just take a couple of back stitches. If you have a machine that will do it's kind of like a lock stitch in place, you could do that instead of back stitching. I'm hanging on to these threads and pulling a little bit so that it doesn't start to get fabric jammed down inside my throat plate. But just to help it get started, sometimes that's helpful. All right, and now I am stitching right along that fold. I'll go to the edge. I'll do just 2 little back stitches. Now I'll cut my threads very close. Okay. Now, it doesn't say to press again, but I will. I'll go press this, and then this will lay flat. Let's look at step 2. Pin upper pocket to apron 8, matching symbols. Edge stitch side and lower edges. So we have tailor tacks marking the top corners of the pocket. So we'll align those with the top corners of the pocket, pin them on, and then we'll be stitching down the side, across and up, but it says edge stitch. So we'll be stitching just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. That's a very tiny seam allowance. All right, let's start pinning. Here's my apron, right side up. Oh yeah, we didn't have tailor tacks. This is where we marked our dots. So the corners match the corners, just like that. So let me place some pins. It's a little tricky demonstrating because I've got the pattern piece directly underneath instead of just the cardboard. So I don't want to pin through the paper. Get some more pins here. Now this pocket is mostly decorative. It could be functional, meaning you can use it to put something in it, maybe a pen, but it's mostly for looks. And with the way that this apron was designed, all 3 of the pockets are both functional and decorative. So I'll go ahead and fold this the way I showed you earlier. This fabric is a tight weave, even though it's lightweight, so that's kind of why my pins are having a tough time going through all these layers. There. Okay, this one, fold it up on the diagonal, fold it down and down. Repin that one. And this part isn't quite square, so here's where we just work with it till it looks just the way we want. Make sure that's flat. All right, I'm about ready to edge stitch around this pocket. This is a small area, and I'll do my best to keep my hands out of the way. We'll start with a little back stitch, right? 1 stitch off the edge of the pocket. There we go. Now we're going forward. You saw how I grabbed it a little bit, gave it a, not so much a tug, but just held it firmly to get started. Pivot so my needle is down and turning. Lower the presser foot. And then continue along that lower edge. do the last few stitches by hand. Well, with the hand wheel's help, I should say. And I can scoot it back a little bit. I want it to be about 1/8 of an inch from the edge when I pivot. All right, now I can go forward. Make sure my pocket is flat. I'm going to go 1 stitch off the edge and then reverse. Okay, I'll take this out. If this was a pocket that, as I mentioned, maybe a woodworking apron that you were using out in wood shop, and these pockets were going to get a lot of wear and tear, I would also, I can show you here, I would sew across about 3 stitches and then diagonal down, and that would reinforce those top corners of the pocket. But for this apron, it won't have that much wear and tear. So there, we have completed step 2. And again, when I go press it, it'll look nice and flat. Here's what we just completed. So now the directions say for pocket 9, follow step 1. So we go back where we started, and we'll follow these steps to make pocket number 9, even though it's a different shape. So let's do that. We'll remove our pattern piece. We've got the lines that we've made, and we'll begin. Remember, we didn't use an overlock. We stitched 1/4 inch from the edge, and then we pressed it toward the wrong side. And at that time I used 1/4 inch foot. I'm not going to take the time to switch it. I'm just using the marking that tells me it's 1/4 inch. I will go to the iron and press this. Now we turn the top edge to the outside along fold line, stitch the ends and trim. As we did, we turned it to the right side, fold down this top part, which would be the top hem of the pocket, right where our tailor tacks are. Pin that in place. The other side as well. Make sure it's flat. So now we're stitching 5/8 of an inch from the edge. I am going to back stitch. I'm holding up this 1/4 inch that we pressed. And I'll continue around. With my presser foot, turn it. I'm over a little bit onto my tape, so I need to make another stitch. I'll use my hand wheel. That's better. I can move that out of the way. And I use that tailor tack. Slowing down as I get closer to the edge. I want 5/8 of an inch when I pivot. I'm over a little bit, so let me go back one more. There we go. Actually, I must have been right the first time because that is over a little too far. I'll adjust it so I've got 5/8. Reverse right off the edge. Just a couple stitches. Clip my threads. And I'll trim those a little bit closer. Thread here that doesn't belong. All right. Now these tailor tacks tell us, they're actually where it gets folded, but also it tells us our top stitching. Oh, but let's finish this. We need to clip. And I showed you before, I usually clip at an angle to a 1/4 inch right here. And then trim that. On the other side, start a 1/4 inch over, then go to the edge. Okay. Turn the points out for my pocket corners. And now I'll go to the iron. I'll press this top hem flat. I'll press on my 5/8 inch seam lines, and I'll press the corners in. I've turned the edge to the inside. I press these diagonally. So now we were up to this point, stitch close to inner edge as shown. So we're stitching the hem of the pocket down. Reversing just a couple stitches. And then I'm hanging on to my threads to get it started. There's a lot of fabric there. It likes to get stuck, so I like to hang on to it. Clip my threads very close. All right, now we go back to number 3 because we've completed all of this. So number 3, pin pocket 9 to apron, matching large circles. Stitch close to side and bottom edges and along stitching lines. So just as we did here, we'll go side, bottom, and up a side, but then we'll come back and do the lines that we drew with our marker. So this pocket is not centered, it's off to the side. We'll place our pocket right there. Okay. And then fold the corners in, fold the sides on our seam line. You can see you need to take your time. And now we'll sew an eighth of an inch from the edge of pocket, just as before. We'll back stitch 1 stitch off the edge. There's our 1 stitch. Go forward. Pivot. Our needle is down. Lower your presser foot. Lower the presser foot, turn. Stitch over the edge and reverse. There's 2 back stitches. And trim our threads right close. And the other side as well. So we went around the pocket. Now we'll stitch these lines. Make sure it's flat. And as we've done before, reverse one stitch off the edge and then go forward. And this time, our blue line that I marked with my marker is going right down the middle of my presser foot so that my needle goes exactly on that drawn line. A couple of back stitches, and once again, clip really close. Okay, so there's one, and when I press it, that'll look flatter. So now the other side. Now again, I mentioned things about being functional and decorative. These pockets are both functional and decorative. These lines are really your choice. The way the pattern has it, you've got a small section here, a little wider, a little narrower, and this is the look that the pattern designer wanted. But if you want one line down the middle, that's okay. If you don't want any divisions in your pocket, that's okay too. That's where your own creativity comes in. I will press that shortly. Now we have, let's look at our directions. We have finished, step 3. Okay. Let's take a look at step 4. Overcast the top edge of lower pocket 10. And again, we've learned that we're not overcasting with this lightweight fabric. So I'll go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch line from the edge, and then I'll press it toward the wrong side. Here's piece 10. This is the fold line, so this is the upper edge that will be making a small hem. So we'll go ahead and stitch a 1/4 inch. I've lined it up with the 1/4 inch on my machine. Notice I did not backstitch on either end. And I'm getting better about showing you clipping the threads on both sides when I finish something. I think in our first project, I'm just used to clipping the threads and I didn't talk about it. So anyway, now I'm gonna go press this, and then let's see what's next. Turn top edge of pocket to inside along fold line, press. Based ends. So I'm not flipping it back like I did on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and do both pressing steps. I'm going to press a 1/4 inch down, and then I'm going to press on the pocket line. Now where's that? This line where my tailor tack is, the top where this dot is, and where this tailor tack is, that's all going to be, this will be folded down on that line. Be right back. I pressed a 1/4 inch under on the top edge of my pocket, and then I turned it toward the wrong side where my tailor tacks were and where the top of my dots were. So this is what it looks like now, and it says turn top edge of pocket to inside along fold line, press ends, stitch close to inner edge as shown. So I need to stitch right here and make a hem at the top of my pocket. Now, when I was at the iron, I went ahead and did a step early. It says turn seam allowance on bottom edge of pocket and press. So I went ahead and stitched 5/8 of an inch from the edge, since I need to press it up 5/8, so that helped me know instead of getting out my seam gauge and measuring. So I press it up 5/8. So this bottom section right here is already complete. So I'll stitch it here, and then we'll be ready for this step. I did not backstitch. These edges will be in the seam allowance on the sides of the apron. So now here's what it looks like from the front. I will press this, double press the bottom, and then let's look at the directions. Pin lower pocket to apron, matching large circles. The large circles were over on the sides, the top part and the bottom part of this pocket. So that's the tailor tack that's here and here on both sides. Let's see, stitch close to lower edge, lower pressed edge and along stitching lines. So in this case, we're stitching the bottom edge of the pocket. We're stitching along the lines that we've drawn. Now for the sides, you can see in the picture that they show larger basting stitches. And so actually the last step, probably the directions are on the next page, it'll tell you to baste it right here. So we'll do all those steps. I'll pin this on and then I'll show you how to sew it. So let's move this over. And now, there's the tailor tack, there's one. And we see that this pocket overlaps this one. Again, that's a design decision by the person who made this pattern. Tailor tacks that should match, so to pull that up, make sure this is nice and flat. Oh, interesting. Notice this line. It will match right up with this pocket line, top stitching. I'm going to pin that so it doesn't slide. Again, that's a design feature, so the pattern maker was pretty clever. Matching tailor tacks. Also pinning the side of the pocket, the side of the apron. All right, I'll use a regular stitch length along the bottom. I am going to backstitch here. Okay, I'm going to sew all across the lower edge of the pocket. I can take out my tailor tacks. They've served their purpose. One on the pocket. All right, so I sewed the bottom of the pocket down. Now I need to sew these lines that will make the pocket into sections. So this one's already pinned. I'll add an extra pin here. I'll do the same thing here. one stitch off the top edge. Like this. And the other line. There we go. My threads here, I'll go back and clip the upper ones late in a little bit. Let's find the edge. All right. Now on the sides, we just want to baste those down. So to machine baste, I'm going to go 4/8, so we don't need to take it out later. It won't be shown anywhere. I'll move my tape over so you can see. 4/8 is a 1/2 inch. It's 1/8 less than where we were. So put the tape there. And then I'm going to lengthen my stitch. So wherever you do that on your machine, it was at a 2.2, I've moved it to a 3.5. So it makes long stitches. And it just holds that in place so I don't have to have pins there. We'll do that on the other side. And I don't have to backstitch when I'm basting. So we have the top pocket, the middle pocket, and now we've completed the one that's all the way across the front of our apron. I need to clip all my threads front and back, and then I need to take water and rub these blue lines to remove those markings. Now, if any of my stitching shows that I did just to be able to know where to press, I can remove those. So it'll just look great, ready for the next step in our next episode. So thank you for joining me for our pocket episode of Sew with Mrs. Herbert.